You're listening to the Nutmeg Arena by the Nutmeg Assist.
Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 48 of the Nutmeg Arena podcast. Today, we'll be previewing the La Liga season, and we are joined by a special guest. He's been on the podcast before, not so long ago. So, we welcome once again Michael, known by the name Cholo Colcho on Twitter. Welcome back, Michael. Glad to have you again.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I'm really pumped to be back. It's crazy to think last time we talked, it was March, right? So the pandemic was just starting up. Feels like a totally different world now.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And as usual, we have Chris, my co-host of the show as well. Welcome back, Chris, once again.
Thank you. Great to be back. Looking forward to this one. See if we can trump the last one, eh, Michael?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
I mean, we previewed the Premier League a few days back, and now we're previewing the La Liga, and we'll preview the Bundesliga as well next week. So it's all coming together. I mean, the energy is coming back again. Football's back, and I think football's definitely kind of an escape route from all that's happening in the world right now.
Definitely.
Yeah. And La Liga, this is going to be exciting. Because this off-season, we've been hearing a lot of stuff, especially Barcelona, but not just Barcelona.
A little bit.
Yeah, Barcelona, Valencia, Villarreal had some surprise new announcement, positive announcement. And it's been a mess. Spanish football you said last time that Spanish football was a complete mess, and that's exactly what's happened. So if we'll start with, we will just go through the top four, then probably go to the mid-table and the bottom half, followed by who you think might finish in the relegation zone, basically teams who will get relegated. But moving on to the top tier teams first, Real Madrid, Barcelona. Do you see anyone else giving these two a competition this season, Michael?
Oh, I wish. If I was going to bet any money, it's the two obvious ones, Atletico Madrid and Sevilla. But I don't know. I would say either of those teams realistically could at least get close to the title if they're going up against a sort of weakened Madrid or Barcelona. But I think there are just too many questions, obviously, specifically about the Catalans to know how they're going to do this season. But I'm kind of not the most optimistic person on Madrid right now. We'll have to see what happens with a couple of key players first.
Yeah, Madrid, and if you look at Madrid, they have not made any signings perfectly, I guess. They've had Odegaard back, and they've decided to keep him this season. And I think the only big probably, I think they've actually sold players rather than buy. Oscar Rodriguez moved to Sevilla. James, after so long, moved to Everton. Chris is happy with that signing, being an Everton fan.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And Takefusa Kubo, again, the youngster, he moved to Villarreal. We'll come to that in some time. And players like Brahim Diaz moved to Milan on loan. Renier moved to Dortmund on loan again. It's probably similar to Achraf Hakimi. Hakimi moved permanently, which is a surprise for me, definitely. And,
me too.
And that's all. Yeah.
I was going to say, let's touch on that, the Hakimi, because I think that came as a bit of a shock to mostly everyone. Are you surprised, Michael, that given how well he done at Dortmund, that they've sold him so quickly, Real Madrid?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that they got rid of him. I'm not at all surprised that he wanted to get out. I mean, Dani Carvajal is still young. He still has a good half dozen top tier years in him, I think. So why would he want to come in and be a deputy when he's so obviously ready to be a starter right now? Makes perfect sense to me. Maybe Madrid just didn't really have much to do to stop him, to be honest. They've got a couple of giant transfers they're going after. One of the most obvious ones, we all know who that is. So I imagine they're in one of those positions where they want to get as much money in the door as they can.
Yeah. I mean, it did shock me. I mean, it didn't shock me how quickly he got snapped up. But, I mean, I suppose looking at it, they probably got good money for someone who wasn't important to them. But I thought this was his chance. I thought this was going to be their step up. But maybe Zidane just had Has there been any mention of him having any concerns regarding him as a player, or do you think it was just purely from a financial aspect?
Yeah, I haven't heard any of those concerns like you hear with, a guy like Reguilon or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I'm sure it was more just sporting, and they rate Danny highly, as they should. Yeah, that's tough. You could criticize him and say, oh, at a guy who's 21, you want to see him kind of make the big step and try to challenge one of the best players in the world. I hear that. I don't think there's any criticism though in saying, great, but I don't really need to do that to prove myself. I can go thrive at another top team. So understandable either way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Madrid, like you said, they've not strengthened much, right? So, and yeah, it's obvious that none of the other teams have also massively strengthened or kind of, obviously you can say that none of the teams in Spain, I think, haven't strengthened. Maybe Sevilla a little, Villarreal also.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Villarreal, I think probably the team who's strengthened the most. I would say because they've brought in a new manager in Unai Emery, and he's definitely. Yeah. I mean, he gets a lot of stick, but I think he's still a good manager. So that's a big coup for Villarreal. But
yeah, I love that.
With no other team strengthening, I think Real Madrid might probably think that this is another year where they probably will have a great chance to win the league again. Back-to-back league titles would be great for them, because I think you have to go long back to find Real Madrid winning back-to-back league titles. It's been one in some time, and then Barcelona going ahead and winning multiple titles. So this time it's going to be really, really close, I feel.
Yeah, I think so too. Madrid, it's interesting. I don't know that they've actually bought outright a single player this season, right? I mean, they brought a bunch of loanees back, and I know they got about 15 players off the books. But I don't think they've actually purchased anybody yet. So that tells you, I think, probably two things. Number one, how the pandemic is affecting even the biggest club in the world, but also just where they've been in the past few years of hoarding talent and having enough people to move around right now at the moment. It's better than most other Spanish clubs are looking at right now.
Exactly. And their biggest rivals for the title, Barcelona, they've been, I mean, we actually spoke about the mess the clubs in the last podcast we had, and that was months ago, and they're still it's getting worse and worse day by day, or day after day, you can say. And the whole Messi saga, my God, it's been such a ride, such a cycle. I personally know a few Barcelona fans who said like they are fully tired. They just don't know what will happen, and they're ready to accept anything and everything that's thrown their way, because it's been a circus. I would actually say it's a circus there at Barcelona, the way the clubs actually run off the pitch. But you look at the on the pitch stability. I think they sold Arthur and bought in Pjanic from Juventus, another 30-year-old signing. They've been linked with Wijnaldum, who's a player I like very much. He's really good in my opinion, but is that a player that Barcelona need? I don't think so. Memphis Depay, again, a signing which Ronald Koeman likes, and again, Ronald Koeman's coming. Next year you're gonna see, I guess we'll have the elections again next year, and if there's a different president, I think which is pretty much likely. I don't know if Ronald Koeman stays again beyond this 1 year. So it's all uncertain there at Barcelona. But you look at the team, they bought in Pjanic, like I said, Pedri from Las Palmas, who's really exciting. Trincao as well. Trincao from Portugal. So it's not a very bad window considering the pandemic, considering the situation, and also the rest of the league. But it's Barcelona.
Where do you even start with this club? Let's remember, it doesn't seem like that long ago that we were talking about the Liverpool disaster and that they were all desperate to get Valverde out of the club. That wasn't even a year ago. And now, man, what was it? It was back in January. I feel like the biggest point of drama was that Arda Turan's still at the team. Now, all the youth players getting moved on, Arthur getting sold, new manager, Messi trying to leave. It's like, man, where do you start with a situation going on out there?
Yeah, I'm slightly put back. I mean, I don't know if I'm in disagreement with you guys, but when we say, first of all, just to go over Rithwick's point again, do you actually see Barcelona being Real Madrid's closest rivals this year, Michael?
Man, that's such a tough question to answer right now. I think I wrote about this on Twitter once. If you look at the squad, it's not that bad of a squad, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand there are a lot of imbalances and there are a couple of key roles that aren't sort of top tier. But on the whole, top to bottom, you could be doing a lot worse than Barcelona is. So if Real Madrid comes out hitting, full form and hits right out of the gates at top gear, I think they're going to be hard to stop. But you keep hearing things about Hazard's fitness, and I think that's a key part of what's going to happen with Madrid. I'm not banking on Benzema having another season like he has in the past 2 campaigns. So just a couple of things go wrong from Madrid. All of a sudden, Barcelona is a title contender really, really quickly, assuming everything hits on with them. So, yeah, they're probably the biggest contenders, but there are just so many question marks, man. It could go really bad, or I could see them winning a couple trophies somewhat easily.
Yeah. I mean, you've mentioned it on paper, I think we're all in agreement. I think most of the world will be in agreement that this squad is still more than adequate enough to challenge in most competitions. By all means, not favourites to win any competitions anymore. But like I said, on paper, these players on the day can perform to a very high standard. But do you think the manager is up to the level to do it?
Ooh, I think you'd know better than I would, right?
Yeah.
That's it, man. Honestly, I'd love to hear your perspective on it, because when he comes in, I think you're already seeing part of the problem that's been going on for 5 years now with Barcelona. He comes in, and it's all these signings that just feel so random that I'm sure if he was coming in and the plan was, let's give Coleman 5 years to build out a project, let's let him start from now as if it's sort of ground zero. Okay, then maybe some of these signings you're thinking this is long-term depth, this is to help him transition to a certain philosophy of football. But because there's not that long-term view in front of us, it just feels like, grab whatever you can to meet the manager's needs. But like, where's he going with all of this? What problems is he solving explicitly? How are they going to play ball? I don't even know. But again, I'd love to hear your perspective, because I feel like you're much more informed on him than I am.
Yeah, I mean, again, where do you start? For me, the only link to Barcelona is the fact that from a playing perspective, he's a legend for the club because he played in Cruyff's dream team. But as a manager, for me, he's so far from what you would call a Barcelona manager. That's why it shocked me when he was actually appointed, that he actually went through that Barcelona as a club actually went through to it. Now his time in England, his time at Everton, in his first season, there was some really good aspects about what he'd done at the job. I mean, he got the best at it. Romelu Lukaku, we finished 7th. Our home form was fantastic. We beat the teams that we had to beat, and we were difficult to beat again. But again, that summer, and as most Evertonians will know, they will always refer to the summer of 2017, was when the first time we tried to sort of stretch our wings and actually compete and spend some money. You couldn't have wrote it more wrong than what it actually went. And I think one of the problems of that was that Koeman doesn't really have a philosophy or a style of play to actually go to. And now our director of football at the time was Steve Walsh, and it seemed like they were at loggerheads. They both wanted different things. So you could argue both. Yeah, you could argue both sides of the coin. Really, Koeman didn't get the plays that he wanted, but then when he doesn't have a style of play or certain formation that he sort of adheres to, then what plays do you actually go out and buy for him? So I mean, it was a contributing number of factors. It weren't solely down to him on why it went wrong at Everton. But again, I think that was a main from a football point of view. That was a main part of why it went wrong, because of the fact that he didn't have a style and a philosophy. So therefore, we were just buying players, a bit like you've said there. Just seemed like we were picking players from everywhere. Who's available? Are they available for that price? Right, let's get him in. And then I remember on his first game of the season, I mean, we bought 3 number 10s that summer. I mean, if you want to class David Klassen as a number 10, Sigurdsson, Wayne Rooney. I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who plays at front for Everton, started that day as a right wing back. And
yeah, you see, that's not necessarily a problem in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
When you think about a manager, what do you need? You need someone who's going to control the locker room at Barcelona, who has a bunch of very powerful personalities that have a big reputation, probably a bit of ego at this point. You've got a bunch of young stars who he needs to get the best out of. So that's one, just like the man management of the team. Second thing I'm looking at is what does he do as a tactician? What's his philosophy of football? And then number three, how's he going to be able to build out a project? I would say so far, and to his credit, he's had next to no time yet. But I can't imagine that any Barcelona fans feeling encouraged in any of those aspects right now. And it sounds like what you're saying is that Everton, all of them kind of came off the rails a little bit at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there was murmurs at the time of his sort of off the field approach, that he was typical Dutch arrogance, etc. He weren't really involved in the club. He didn't really want to be there. And I mean, given the way we approached him and how long it took to actually get him as the Everton manager, I don't really think he ever wanted a job. I think it was purely financial at the time. Obviously, this is a good point for him now and a good point for Barcelona. Barcelona not going to have that issue because he's quite clearly wanted the Barcelona job. This is his dream job. So maybe his approach off the field, and hopefully he has learned from past mistakes, it'll be a lot better than what it was. I mean, if you compare the Everton job to what he'd done at Southampton, I mean, it's like apples and oranges. At Southampton, he was getting he got the best out of players with limited ability. They spent very shrewdly. They were competing against all the top teams. I mean, they found players like Mane who were playing really well, even like local British players at the time, like Stephen Davis. He was turning them into top midfielders at the time. And Oliveira was there on loan at one point, ended up going to Tottenham. That was a good move for him. Nathaniel Clyne. I mean, there was at the time, Southampton were sort of like the next best thing outside the elite clubs for those 2 seasons that Ronald Koeman was in charge. But at the same time, Southampton were a well-run club. So Ronald Koeman didn't really have anything to do. Plus, he took over the job from Pochettino. So you could actually probably go as far as saying, well, did he just come in and carry on? Did he actually try to did he just come in and actually carry on his job and not actually have any influence over them? And then when he came to Everton, he had the influence, and that's when it sort of went wrong. So it depends on which way you look at it before you start giving him any kind of credibility as a manager. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see where it goes with him. I really am, because like I said, he's a Barcelona legend and he's got links to the club. So I can understand why he's took the job. But in terms of his football approach, he's so far from what you would call a Barcelona manager that I just don't see it going right. But hopefully for Ronald Koeman that he proves me wrong. But it will be interesting to see. But again, Michael, I'd just like to see what your opinion was. Again, it's Koeman's appointments come very much under the spotlight from the Messi saga. So maybe he gets a little bit of luck with that. But did you really ever see Messi leaving Barcelona?
I saw Messi at the very least wanting to leave, and I think whenever we started hearing about legal issues coming between the two sides, I thought, oh man, this could really happen. And I felt, all the pieces kind of made sense for him to go play with Pep. So I thought that was going to happen there for a minute. And I even started thinking about how if you're going to give a new manager a clean slate, I mean, you never want to sell Lionel Messi, but if you're going to do it, I guess give him a really clean slate to work with. I wasn't surprised that the club obviously didn't want him to go. It feels a little bit like he's being held against his will. I know that's probably more dramatic language than is necessary, but it feels a bit like that. So last year he started the season, whenever he got fit, he came out of the gates just hot as hell. He was playing above probably what he was able to maintain for the whole season, as he proved out. So I'm just curious to see as he comes in now. I'm sure he'll be as motivated as ever because he's a professional, but feeling a bit like he missed his chance to move on. He doesn't really have faith in the club. What version of him are we going to see? That's obviously a huge question mark with the club this year.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry, Rifik. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and also with Luis Suarez linked with the move to Juventus, which I guess is very much likely to happen. Juventus again is actually breaking their own rules. They're shipping out Gonzalo Higuain and buying another 30-plus-year-old striker, Luis Suarez. It's replacing wood with wood. It's like replacing wood with wood.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So with Suarez leaving, who's like very, very close to Messi. I mean, PK is already expressed that he's not very much happy. But I don't know how Ronald Koeman is going to handle all these egos at the club, the senior footballers, and also if he's to bring players like Wijnaldum and Depay, if Barcelona get these signings done, where do you fit Messi? I mean, obviously Messi will start. I mean, it's not a question how Messi will play in the starting 11. Definitely he will, but then what's the point in signing players like Wijnaldum? Because you have Pjanic, you have De Jong, you have Busquets who can play in the double pivot if Koeman's going for a 4-2-3-1, and Messi probably playing as a number 10, definitely. But Wijnaldum again, what's the use of signing Gini Wijnaldum for 20 million if you want to directly put him on the bench and he's not going to get much minutes? So I don't know how Koeman's going to manage all these egos, plus how he's going to approach the transfer market. Judging by what we're hearing right now, it's definitely not positive, I would say, Michael. What do you think?
I feel the same way. So this is a good time, I think, to compare. So Barcelona for me is like between Valencia on the far end of having no vision and Madrid, who has some clear vision, at least for the next couple of years. So what Madrid is doing is they're not signing any players, but for a reason. They know they're trying to get Mbappe to be the star signing for the next decade, probably, and they want to do that within the next year. So they're willing to bank on Benzema, at least doing close to what he's been able to do the past couple of years. They're going to rely on some young players. They're praying that Hazard gets his stuff together and that other guys like Vinicius continue to develop. I think if not for that plan in place, they would probably have bought a couple of other people by now. But they're saying, I'm going to bank on the current squad for a year so that I get a better return in the next year or so in the future, which will give them better position for the future. Whereas with Barcelona, it feels like it's not that it feels like this. It is like this, and Messi's confirming it. There is no long-term vision. If they were going to say, okay, we'll keep guys like Suarez and Griezmann, we'll hold on, even like a Rakitic. We're going to keep, these older kind of expiring players so that in the next couple of years, when we have the chance to grab a guy like Mbappe or whatever, Lautaro Martinez, whoever, there's a star that we have in mind that we can't get now, but we can if we just wait a year. I think fans would be more comfortable saying, okay, let's keep some of these aging stars. Let's wait for the right time to get these guys. But it's not like that. It's just shooting from the hip, and whatever new manager comes in, you try to plug gaps for him and hope for the best. So they're trending more toward Valencia's methodology right now than they are Madrid's, and I think that's the big difference. What happens a year from now after the election? Then what? We're going to have a whole new slate of players, probably a new manager unless he wins the treble. And then we're right back where we were. And there will be even older stars that are expiring and probably sitting on fat salaries that don't want to move on. So what are we solving here?
Yeah. I mean, the short-term vision is one thing, but I mean, the long-term vision at that club is astounding. I think we touched on it in the last podcast, didn't we?
Yeah. It's gotten worse.
Yeah, it's gotten worse since the last podcast, which I didn't think was actually possible. So,
man.
But I just want to touch on as well, before we go on to some questions. I mean, Seville right now, they must be going into the new season feeling pretty great and pretty confident that there's a gap here, maybe that they could exploit, maybe with a dark horse for a title challenge themselves.
I think so. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's actually Sevilla who spent the most in the summer. Now I know a big chunk of that was Suso, who they had to buy for 30 mil or something, or 25 million.
Yeah.
But so I think they spent almost, 40, 45 something this summer. So they're up there among the biggest spenders. I think you're right on, man. Again, I don't expect this to be a season where surely we're not going to see, a 9,500 point league winner. If Hazard doesn't hit form, and if a couple of Barcelona guys don't at least maintain the underwhelming form they had last year, they're really beatable. So I think if you're Sevilla, you're coming off of getting a trophy. You're going to see Lopetegui in his second season with, I think, a stronger squad that even somehow he got even more tactical options in midfield than he had before. The only major big question mark for me is at left back, where I know Acuna seems like he at least may be the guy that they bring in. That feels like a strong, deep team that if they prioritize the league and just making sure they get, a top 4 finish and a deep Champions League run, they're not going after the title. They're just trying to get some money in the door from the Champions League. So I don't know, man. I think a couple things go right, and you do have that sort of surprise 2014 Atleti situation where they can at the very least get within grabs of the title, I think.
Yeah. And how do you think they will approach the Champions League, Michael? Because it always makes me wonder with Seville, because obviously their history and their tradition now of winning the Europa League. Mm-hmm. If, say, for example, they get a tough group, are they actually going to ever aim to get into the knockout stages of the Champions League, or would they prefer to finish third and go out and go straight into the Europa League and probably win it? I don't think anyone can go. Yeah.
I'll tell you, man, I think they approach it like Monchi does. They're not looking at it just from sporting or recognition. I think to them at this stage in their growth trajectory, they're thinking, man, that extra money from a knockout stage Champions League tie would be bigger for us than winning the Europa League. So why not go for that? But at that point, I think once you get to the knockout stages, they're probably content with however deeply they go. They're obviously not going in there thinking they're contenders. You never know. I think the Champions League is pretty open, but they're realistic. I think that's probably one of the most level-headed organizations in the league right now. So they know what they can do. They know their expectations. Aim for the top 4. Try to get to the knockout stages. Anything you get above that, once you see there's real hope, they're going to go after it. But not much more than that, I think.
Yeah.
And then you compare them to Atleti, and it's like, man, they're in a tricky spot of what is their vision for the year? Because obviously they need to keep getting that Champions League money in the door, or they're going to lose guys quickly. They probably always feel like they're one of the second-tier contenders for the Champions League title. But should this be a season where they feel like challengers for the league? I mean, they have the squad to do it. They have the experience to do it. But I don't get the sense that that's what they're going for. It's a little disappointing to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were going to mention Atletico Madrid as part of the discussion, so you've brought us on to them. I mean, what is the feeling around Atletico Madrid at the moment? Just especially the way the Leipzig performance, for example, after and the way they left the Champions League. What's the general consensus at the club?
It should be more hopeful to me, because it was last summer where they had a big clear out. They lost a lot of senior leaders. They lost half the starting 11, it felt like. So everybody knew that last season was a transition year. Simeone was going to get a lot of flack for the first, half plus of the year, because you knew they were going to underperform. But they came back. They got pretty close to a semifinal in the Champions League. They got, top 4 spot again. So they showed that even through a transition year, they are that caliber of team. So now that they have pretty much the same squad that, should be performing even better, their star signing Felix, he should really start coming into his own. It should feel like, okay, guys, let's go for the next jump in terms of a, sporting position. Let's either see ourselves as genuine Champions League contenders, or let's go into the season feeling like we're competing for a title. But that's not the energy I get. It feels more like, okay, shoot for the top 4. Honestly, it feels just like Sevilla. Let's shoot for the top 4. Got to get that money in the door. It's still very much like, hey, a pandemic's coming. Let's just make sure we don't lose our star players. If we do that, it's a success. Yeah. And come on, I mean, at least go for, like, let's get within title distance. Maybe we don't win it, but let's get within a few matches. None of this being out of the title race by December or February like we've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, because there's massive opportunity. As a neutral, this could be one of the most exciting La Ligas there has been in a long time.
Yeah.
Just due to the issues that we've discussed at Barcelona. Real Madrid, again, seem like a team. They seem to be just moving forward good, but I mean, they're not exceptional by any stretch of imagination.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially, like you said, be hard to see whether Benzema can actually repeat the season that he had last year, whether Hazard stays fit. So there's opportunities for teams like Seville and Atletico Madrid. Especially like Atletico Madrid, given the players that they've actually got already to make a massive push here and disrupt the top 2, not just for next season, but for maybe years to come if they plan wisely. But yeah, I'm just curious to see. I mean, you mentioned yourself there, like last season has got to be considered due to the transfer activity in the summer, a transition period for Atletico Madrid. But is there going to be maybe some pressure put on Diego Simeone this year if Atletico Madrid are not up there? Do you think?
Yeah, man, it's tricky. These opportunities for a team like Sevilla or Atleti to really genuinely compete for the title, they don't come around very often. Okay, we all know the gap between that second tier of Liga sides and the big two is just enormous. So to see this, it feels like everybody can tell this could be a real opportunity to at least get above Barcelona and probably get within the title. The challenge with your question directly related to Simeone, I think he's going to have pressure from certain players. I think just the nature of his relationship with the club, he won't have any pressure unless he falls out of the top four. The club's not going to sack him because he doesn't win a title. And you could say that's unfortunate, but that's just the reality. I think most fans, especially domestically, are in the same boat. But there are players like Oblak, Partey. I think they might start saying, okay, we want more than this. And the squad is here. And we're still not going as deeply as we can. I'm ready to move on. So I could see that happening more so than the fans or especially the club starting to say he's kind of expired his welcome there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you look at the transfer rumors as well, Michael, I mean, Atletico definitely, Arsenal have been heavily linked with Thomas Partey. And I'm not sure if that move will go through because we still have 1 month left before the transfer window closes.
That's crazy.
Less than a month. But again, it's the transfer window. It's crazy every single year. So you never know what might happen. But and it's Arsenal, so obviously you can't expect them to sell a lot. But again, if they lose Thomas, it's going to be a big blow. But they've been also linked with Mark. They've been linked with Espanyol's Mark Roca, who I don't know if it's just a bogus rumor, but I see the Express linking him with. Yeah. So in terms of transfer activity, do you think Atleti needs to strengthen some position in the team?
Well, do they need to? Sure. Can they? No. I mean, they don't really have the funds to do it, and they have a couple of guys like Thomas Lamar and Diego Costa who really should never probably have been bought, but that's a whole separate conversation. Guys that need to be moved on, but in the current market, they just can't. Or if they do, they're going to take a massive loss on especially Lamar's investment. So, they got Carrasco. That's really encouraging. I think he's going to be a starter pretty quickly. They just, finalized that deal this week. That's encouraging. They're bringing back a couple of younger guys that on the defensive side that I think will be healthy again. It'll be good moves. But overall, their hands are just so tied. But that's okay. I mean, look at that squad, though. This is the second year for a lot of young, strong players that should be starting to come into their own under a new manager. So, if I'm Barcelona and there are no new signings, I'm a little concerned. If I'm Valencia and watching half my squad get sold, I'm very concerned. But if I'm Atletico Madrid, I feel pretty good about this squad. Honestly, they're in a good position, I think.
Yeah. And I would like to actually sneak in a patron question here. I mean, Chris asked you already about Sevilla being a dark horse, which is also a patron question from Dieter Van Vogt. But another question from Dieter himself is on Valencia. Do you think Valencia could have a revival this season? Because they've appointed a new manager, Javi Gracia. I mean, again, they've sold their captain, Dani Parejo. They sold Francis Coquelin, they've sold Ferran Torres. I think they bought in Rulli, or have they sold him? I'm not sure about that. Okay, it's not Valencia again. Sorry. So they've actually made all these sales, and having Garcia, we discussed in the last podcast whether he would be a yes man or would he actually go there to kind of say for example he's going there to say we are going to challenge again. I'm going to get this team. I'm going to make them a top 4 candidate once again. I'm going to take Valencia back to the top again. Looks like he is, because I think it was yesterday or today where he had a presser where he mentioned that he's a little bit disappointed with the transfer activity. So he's definitely not being a yes man.
Yeah, he's not naive.
Sure. Yeah, he's definitely not naive. So do you think it could be a revival season for Valencia?
No, I think it's a survival season for Valencia more than revival, to be honest. Man, I feel so bad for these fans, honestly. It feels like just yesterday they were winning a cup trophy and talking about staying in Europe for the next few years. And then just like that, one sacking and it's completely upside down. No, I don't see I don't see Valencia doing much more than a top half finish. I actually think, just given the way that La Liga tends to go, they could probably fight for a European position. But at this point, I'm going to be surprised if they bring any significant signings in the door. And as Javi said today at the presser, this is just not a squad that can compete and be a regular for a European position. So very disappointing, man. I mean, when you see a guy like Ferran Torres go for, what was it, 22 million or something like that?
Yeah.
You lose your captain for free. Rodrigo goes for 30 or, I mean, guys, come on. What? It's not even Barcelona where there's no vision. It's the vision. The vision is, let's just survive while we can and hope that in the next couple of years something drastic changes. Now, okay, look, a little bit of bad luck with the pandemic. I understand that. But, man, this was coming anyway. Just maybe not quite as badly as it did.
Yeah. Michael, has there been any kind of sort of, not deadline, I think that would be the wrong way, but, I mean, is there anything that's come out of Valencia to say, right, well, this is it now. We've made the money back that we needed to make? Or is it just going to be an endless list of, if you stump up any kind of cash, we will sell? Because it just seems, normally when a team goes into this kind of issue, there's like, right, we need to make 50 million quick, or we need to sell off 5 players, 5 the highest wage earners. But it just, there's nothing that seems, has there been anything that's at all that sort of suggests the end?
I mean, Paco Polit, I don't know if you guys follow him on Twitter, but he put out a nice piece, well, a couple of nice pieces talking about just their general health as a club. And and he's kind of my go-to when it comes to a lot of things with Los Che. I don't get the sense that this is make a couple of key signings and then we're going to be right back in the top 4 race. It feels more like, or a couple of key sales, I mean, and then we'll be back in the top 4 race. It feels more like, let's sell now because we were already in trouble and the pandemic put us in emergency mode. And then we can reassess in a year based on what happens, in the league and what kind of money we get in the door. That's like the opposite of encouraging. If I'm a fan, that sounds like we could be here for a few years. And if fans aren't allowed to come back in and get some revenue in the door quickly, they could really be heading for a pretty sharp decline. So there's nothing I see about the club that says, we'll sell a couple other key guys and then we'll be back on the up and up. That's not the direction that I see them going.
Yeah. So what would you consider then a good season for them? Just simply as you've already said.
I'd say if they can not have to hire a second manager or third this season, and if they could finish in the top half, I'd say that's a win. Now, that doesn't really solve anything at all. They really need European money. They need to be playing in Europe every year right now. I would just be, I mean, again, in most years, I feel like this squad probably is good enough. You had Granada competing for a top 6 spot, so this squad should be able probably to do that. But when you look at other sides like Villarreal or Real Sociedad, I mean, even Athletic Club, I just think there are too many guys ahead of them in the pecking order. So I can't see that happen. Top half finish, not have to sell any more key guys, and have the same manager for a whole season. There's a good campaign for me, as sad as that sounds.
Yeah,
and Michael, I'd just like to bring up some other teams as well. Like you just mentioned, Villarreal, who's got Unai Emery in. They've signed Parejo, they signed Coquelin, they signed Rulli, they've signed Takafruza Kubo on loan from Real Madrid.
Exciting, man.
Yeah, so they're actually, Emery is actually trying to make an Emery ball there at Villarreal. They've lost Santi Cazorla, but again, he's definitely a big miss for them as a leader in the dressing room, but they've actually brought in really good players. And Parejo, definitely, again, leader material. So you just replace that figure that Santi Cazorla's left void with another perfect leader in Parejo. So they're doing good business. They are definitely aiming for the top. Athletic Bilbao, again, a club who's always in the mix, and they can always surprise other teams. Real Sociedad, last season, Odegaard was wonderful for them. So this time they were not going to get him, but they signed David Silva. I did not see that coming because he was definitely actually destined to go to Italy, but somehow Sociedad pulled it off. So that's a really, really good coup because they have the experience of Silva. They have, he's still a really good player in my opinion, David Silva, and I think he's definitely going to be a really, really good player and definitely going to start as well. So which teams do you see actually pushing for a top 4 spot? Maybe Sevilla, Atletico Madrid's top 4 spot I would say.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like a lot of the teams you just mentioned are the real potential ones. I think with Getafe, they've sort of been a surprise package fighting for the top four, at least in the last couple of seasons. I don't think that's going to happen again. They're that team that, for me, when we came back from the long layoff, were just a completely different side. It felt like the wind got knocked out of them. They lost all momentum. They looked mentally weak very often. And they haven't really, they've, affirmed getting Kukurea a little bit, and they got Unal. We'll see how that goes. But they haven't really strengthened the squad. I don't know. I don't see them pushing for top four. I could honestly go through the list. Each of those teams you mentioned, I think, could, but they have some real question marks. Real Sociedad, I don't think, has gotten substantially weaker, even with Martin moving on. But their back line still leaves a lot of question marks for me. I don't know if they can handle added fixtures and actually go a step further into fighting for the top four again. I would love to see that happen. I can't see it. Villarreal, same thing. Man, that's probably the most exciting team for me looking at the upcoming season, just with the new signings they got, with the depth they have for this squad. They'll be playing in some European fixtures. But as exciting as that is, when you see a lot of new players come in, you have to immediately ask, well, how long will they need to gel? Where are a couple of these new signings going to play? What does it mean for guys like Chukwueze? New manager? I don't know. They could either be a surprise top four contender, which I would love to see, or take a couple of months to really hit on all cylinders. And before we know it, we're talking about them just hoping to get a top six place. So it's tricky, man. I honestly feel like Atleti and Sevilla have the top four spots pretty locked up this season. But you never know. We had a lot of surprises last campaign too, so you never know.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so that's probably with I guess with the Champions League spot. Definitely, it's gonna be one of these teams or two of these teams who's gonna be occupying the Europa League spots as well. Maybe Granada might push them a little bit.
Oh,
but
I hope so.
yeah, last season was definitely a surprise for me, the way they pushed these clubs.
Yeah.
So
for everybody, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do this season. And in terms of the relegation battle last season, Celta Vigo were actually thrown into the mix. They somehow escaped. But this season, do you see Celta Vigo again in the relegation battle? And about this is again another patent question from Dieter. Do you think the three promoted teams, Huesca, Cadiz, and Elche, somehow staying up?
I do. I'm such a pessimist, man. I swear. I feel like sometimes I'm too hard on La Liga, maybe because it's. But when I honestly, here's the way. And I would love to hear you guys, especially from you, Chris, as more of a Premiership fan. It feels to me like when I look at the Liga as a whole, I go through Celta, Alaves, Eibar, Elche, all the newly promoted teams. You almost half the league I could see genuinely fighting relegation for most of this year. I wouldn't be shocked if Osasuna and even Levante. I know that's a little harsh because I think they're stronger than most of the clubs I mentioned. I wouldn't be shocked to see them in some kind of a relegation battle for at least parts of the season too. So because there are so many sides that I think are pretty level with each other, it makes the bottom half very competitive, which is really enjoyable. And to the question, I think, all three of the newly promoted sides could certainly stay up. But I think it also, on the other hand, kind of makes it a little disappointing that there are so many teams that are just failing to get out of that zone of being, kind of relegation battling sides this year. But again, I'm kind of pessimistic in general when it comes to this sort of stuff. I'd love to know what your perspective is as maybe sort of more looking from more of an outsider's view on the league.
Yeah, I mean, But if we compared it to the Premiership, because obviously that's our obviously mine and Rifric's given the clubs that we support. That's our that's our standard. I probably have a similar opinion as you about the Premiership. Again, maybe I'm
okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit maybe I'm correct in it, and people buy into the marketing aspect of it. But I always think that there's always a lot more teams in the Premiership looking down rather than up. And if you look outside maybe the top 7, generally everyone else is just happy to be in there. Yeah.
That's so disappointing, but it's just the reality.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because I mean, you can look as far up as certainly last season, maybe again because it was the pandemic. In our league, at least up until 10th place, if 1 or 2 fixtures went the other way at the right time, then every one of those teams could have been in a relegation battle come the last 3 or 4 games of the season.
I can see that being the case in Spain for sure.
Yeah, and again, from an outsider's point of view, looking at the league, I get that it's similar there, where it doesn't take much to get out of it, but it doesn't take much to get dragged into it either, just because of the level of inconsistency from the teams, say from 8th place downwards.
Yeah, that's right on.
Yeah.
And, in some ways, I actually think it's kind of a good thing, because it shows that there are a handful of teams that are moving into that kind of third tier of, establishing themselves as top half teams. And so, but the problem is, anybody who's not there yet just has no real chance of breaking that barrier. I think what happened with Granada last year was just so many things coming into play at the right time. But you're right. Yeah. I like your language of more teams looking down than up. It was Real Betis. Gosh, I want to say they finished like 4 points above the drop, right? 4 or 5 points. Come on, that's not a team that should have any business being that low. Even Celta Vigo should be closer to the top half than getting relegated, considering the squads that they have. But they both look like, especially Betis, doesn't look like they're going to improve much at all on last season. And again, I'm saying that with a bit of pessimism. I love that they brought in Pellegrini. Don't get me wrong, but that's just not a side that I look at and say, okay, they're closer to fighting for the top 6 than they are to staying around the bottom half of the league. It is what it is, I guess. There's not much you can do about it, but I see a lot of teams that are going to be in that, if not a relegation battle, then just feeling like getting a top half finish is their real goal for the year.
Yeah.
Again with Pellegrini, Michael, like you said, I mean he was appointed.
That's my guy.
He was appointed by West Ham last summer. He was appointed, and he brought in a lot of players. It went completely wrong. So they've had to sack him, and they had to bring in David Moyes to replace Manuel Pellegrini, who had to keep West Ham up. So that explains a lot. And
please don't let that happen.
There's a lot of Everton connections on this show, guys.
Oh man,
come on, James Rodriguez.
Too much.
Chris is finally so happy that Everton's in the mix.
Yeah. Man. La Liga's team out there. La Liga's team. I love it. Yeah. Betis is tricky, like, again, that squad shouldn't be getting in a relegation battle, in my mind. And I understand, if a couple of things go differently, a couple of people who are injured, if Iglesias performs like half the player that they paid money for, if Carvalho stays fit and gets back on form, okay, they're probably more like, 8 through 12 spot. They're not fighting relegation near the end of the season. But still, it's pretty much the same team as we saw last year. It's older than before. Their big signing this year came for no money, Martin Montoya, and he's somebody that I consider to be very, very average. They needed to upgrade at keeper, so they brought in Claudio Bravo, who's 35, 36, maybe older. Victor Ruiz is brought in to shore up the defense. He's 31, about to be 32. Like, man, what's the goal here? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I rate Pellegrini. I don't think you'll find a bigger fan of his than I am. He's sort of my romantic guy from the last 15 years ago at Villarreal and even Malaga. So I love the guy. But what are you going to put on someone at that age, at that stage of his career, expectations with a team like this? I don't know. I'm not super optimistic. I just look forward to watching him play, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the work he's done with Villarreal before, Malaga as well, I think it's all very much... I think that those are probably the jobs which actually enhance his reputation. But since the City job, I think he's kind of lost the plot. I really don't understand, and I think it's quite similar to what Mourinho went through. Probably, I think it's a phase where Pellegrini, I think, should have taken a break and tried to kind of rediscover himself. But again, I mean, when it's obviously understandable, because managers don't usually like to stay away too much, so they just want to get in when they see a good opportunity. And Betis is really, I mean, in my opinion, I think Betis is a good team for Pellegrini. I think it's a team which I think suits him well. But again, the
squad does for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Claudio Bravo, again, you said it's all. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, because of the finances as well. I don't know if the transfer policy has changed because of the whole situation here with all the clubs.
Yeah, I know it didn't help.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's certainly not helping. The good thing that I like about him going there is you kind of wonder if you're at his age and you've accomplished all that he's accomplished, winning, a title in England, doing so much in Spain already. One of my fears would be that he's just looking for a team to kind of ride out his career, have some fun before he retires. That will not happen at Betis. This is not a club that's going to be content with him just being mediocre or average. Even knowing what happened last year, this is a team that's always going to be looking towards Sevilla and saying, look, if we're not getting close to our biggest rivals, we're failing, and we're not going to settle for that. So in some sense, I think it's good that he's at a team that will push him, that won't settle for mediocrity, and that will kind of demand his best. I don't know what it was like for him in England last year, but he's certainly not walking into a little cushy environment. There's going to be a lot expected of him. So that's good. I think that's going to filter down to the rest of the squad too, which you want at a club at that level.
Yeah.
I think the thing with Mario Pellegrini, I mean, I'm with you, Michael. I rate him quite highly as a manager, but because of the style of play he approaches the game with, he's quite strict with his 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 formation. For me, it's about who he takes over rather than he needs to take over a club with the set of players ready for him. Like
That's right.
Done very well with, again, Everton connection here. He was actually in charge of Villarreal when they knocked out the Champions League, our one and only attempt in the Champions League.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I thought he'd done a great job there. He'd done a great job at Malaga. I thought he was very unlucky in the Champions League against Borussia Jurgen Klopp's. It was that refereeing decision, wasn't it, that sort of knocked them out. Jurgen Klopp getting the benefit of the referees, nothing new there, I suppose. But I also think
Klopp would disagree, but yeah.
Yeah. I also think his job at Real Madrid was very underappreciated.
Oh, no question, man. No question.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Highest point total in history, I think, for them at that point. But unfortunately, he came against the guy. What was his name? Pep something.
Yeah. And I think that approach that we talked about, again, when you have a group of players at Manchester City, that approach can work because of the level of ability. But then when you take that approach to West Ham, it's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, I just didn't have the squad.
I just didn't have the squad, didn't have the players with the right mentality. And once you get into that inconsistency in the Premiership, it's only sooner rather than later that you're going to lose your job. So I'm glad to see him back in a job. But again, I'm with you. It's quite intriguing to see what this job, Real Betis, where I would hate for it to go bad for him. That's all a bit, yeah.
And there's reason to be hopeful there. When you look at the squad, I do see a lot of similarities with what else we've seen in Spain in terms of he has a couple of guys out wide. I know Joaquin, he's like 38 going on 60 right now. But I mean, you have some players that he can utilize on the flank, which he loves to do. You have a couple of creative and hardworking attacking midfielders. He likes to overload. The squad is there, I think, for the way that he wants to play. So for me, Betis is probably, if not the team, one of the teams that I'm most excited to see how they turn out. Because if everything does kind of fall into place with a little bit of luck, right manager, right players, right time, I as weird as it sounds, I wouldn't be shocked at all if these guys are at least getting within those European spots throughout the season. But unfortunately, I also wouldn't be surprised if I see them, fighting relegation for a few months at a time. But so I don't know, they're really intriguing to me. I look forward to seeing what happens with them.
Yeah. Well, given the fact that we're on that subject, one of our Patreons, Paul, probably the best time to ask this question. Who do you think are going to be the biggest overachievers in La Liga this up-and-coming season?
Oh, I love that. That's a good question. I have two teams. You might laugh.
Biggest surprise.
So it's almost unfair to pick Granada, okay? But hear me out. I say it's almost unfair because they overachieved last season, so it's kind of cheating to think they would do it again. But I like this team, man. I mean, it's good leadership, and they actually somehow strengthened a little bit in the summer with Soro, and they brought in Molina in attack. They got Vallejo back. These guys could really surprise a little bit. Now, I don't know that they're going to have, the 3 weeks or 4 weeks where they were, title contenders last season. I don't expect that. But there's no reason anybody on any given season should expect Granada to be a top 6 side, or even probably a top half side most of the time. So I think they're going to overachieve even with the European fixtures. I expect them to surprise some people. The second team, which is where I think people might laugh, is Real Valladolid. Okay, so I know this is like relegation fodder many times, and I think they were clear last year. They, apart from their little 3-game skid, I think they were safe by a couple of matches. But they brought in a couple of interesting signings to me in defense and attack that I think will really, and even out wide, that I think will round out the squad and give them the ability to kind of secure a top half place. Now, I know those aren't sexy. It's not the sexy picks to talk about who's going to surprise with the Champions League position. But I think both of those sides for sure, I say for sure for me, are going to surprise some people with how they perform, at least with a top half team. I wouldn't be shocked to see Valladolid, for example, beat a couple of the heavy hitters in the first half of the season that are coming in a little more tired from European fixtures. Wouldn't shock me at all.
Good shout.
Yeah, Valladolid is actually very. I'm actually surprised that you went with them.
I know. It's sort of a weird pick, and they're not a side that I would usually bank on. But I'm kind of hoping that they'll surprise us with some key wins, especially early on in the season while some other contenders are tired.
Yeah, and I think we have a few more patent questions left, which we'll actually go through. I mean, Chris has definitely asked you one. The other one again from Paul is, who do you think will be the biggest disappointment this season?
So depending on how you view this team, I think Athletic Club is going to underwhelm. I know you would assume, I think on paper, that they'll be fighting for the top 6, but they really don't have any attackers. I mean, they're relying on 33-year-old, 32-year-old Raul Garcia as their primary striker right now. Never a good thing. And no disrespect to him, I know he got double digits in goals last year. I don't think they're going to get close to a European spot this season. Getafe, same. I think they're going to drop. But the one that maybe would be surprising, and I know this kind of goes against what I said a little bit earlier, but I have a feeling that the Yellow Submarine, Villarreal, is going to come out and get rocked a little bit with how slow they start to gel as a team. Even in the preseason friendly that we saw against Valencia, which I never put any weight on preseason matches, and I don't here. But there's something about that team that looks like a really talented squad that's going to take a bit of time to start hitting their stride. And with the top 6 being so tight this year and so many teams fighting for a European place, I don't think they can be afforded that. So I know it's a little risky because of the team I'm really high on at the same time, and I love the squad. I cannot wait to see them play football, but I think they're going to be a little slow out of the gate.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting, given, I mean, is Unai Emery's reputation took any kind of beating since he left Spain? Went to PSG and Arsenal.
Yeah, I think so. And I rate him too, But again, new manager, pretty significant new squad in some key positions. I don't know, man. I've got just a weird feeling about it, and it's not like I can back that up with any data, of course, not yet anyway. But I feel like they could disappoint.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of expectation on them now as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's pushing me the other way. Yeah. I hear people talking about a top 4 position. I'm thinking, oh, man, I don't know that I see that right now.
Yeah.
It's probably a way, I think, way too over expectation on Unai Emery to go ahead and start kicking soon.
I think so. And look, I'd love for that to happen. I hope it happens.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And I think, it's obvious that there will be criticism if he fails to start well, but I think most of them would be unwarranted because of the whole situation that is here right now. No proper preseason.
Exactly.
So
any team with a new manager right now is going to suffer from that, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think any team, even me and Riff, we mentioned this in when we were discussing the Premiership, any team with any kind of momentum, say such as Seville, winning the Europa League coming into this new season, I think they'll come firing out the blocks.
Yeah, I think you're
Because I
right.
think
Which
they'll
is like
still be
the
on the
opposite
high,
of what
yeah.
we saw, with the break last spring.
Yeah,
Some of the
yeah.
teams who were flying in January just came out as if they died, when the
Yeah,
league
yeah.
started back up. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. The momentum. I mean, it was what a month ago. So if you were on a great run of form a month ago, I expect them to keep it up. I think you're right on, Chris.
Yeah, and you mentioned Atletico Bilbao, or Athletic Bilbao, sorry.
Yeah.
They're given like they could be the underperformers of the season. I mean, they're traditionally, whenever you think of, say, a top 6, top 7 club in Spain, and like Rifrit mentioned before, you automatically associate with that club finishing in those places. But I mean, last year they finished 11th, which was
I know.
must have been a disappointment then.
Well, I think they lost like 5 out of the last 6 or something.
Yeah.
They only won one match in the last month and a half. So,
and it is a club.
Drop.
Yeah, it is a club that maybe it hinders itself with its transfer approach, given they only sign Basque players. But at the same time, they tend to just go and sign Real Sociedad's best players anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't matter in the end, right?
Yeah. So they should be doing better, shouldn't they? A lot better. It seems like they always have one good season, 2 bad seasons, one good season, 2 bad seasons. Always just an inconsistent. They never seem to make that sort of next level step up.
And you understand why they're limited, of course. But yeah, and look, a couple things could happen this year. If Asia Villa Libre hits, I don't know, that a couple things like that. A couple young players, especially in attack, and to me, it's a top 3 defense in the league. So I think they're set there. Midfield's pretty strong. Things could go well pretty easily with just 1 or 2 guys surprising out of the gate. But yeah, you never know. At least they're one of the few teams that have a lot of stability right now. And most of the leaders are staying on. So that's a very positive thing, I think, in this context of just the pandemic and all the changes happening this season specifically.
Yeah. And what do you think of the goalkeeper, Unai Simon?
Oh, that's my boy. Come on. That's a guy, right? Yeah, probably the best keeper in Spain last year, at least top 2 for me. So if he has another season like that, I don't know what Lucho would have to do to not start him in the Euros next summer. I think he's the guy. He's the future of the national team, I think. I'm really curious to see if he can do that 2 seasons in a row.
Yeah. Well, that's one of our Patreon questions from Dieter. Do you think he should be in the starting lineup for Spain come the European Championship?
Oh, man, that's a hard question. But here's why. With national teams that are playing in a continental tournament or the World Cup, obviously, I don't think you can overemphasize how important it is to have experience. And so David De Gea, look, nobody can deny his drop in form, but the comments that Lucho made the other day when De Gea had a great match, it was right after the Germany match. I forget who it was. He showed a lot of confidence.
Germany.
And was it Germany? Okay, so he showed a lot of confidence in the players, spoke, I'll butcher it as a quote, but kind of spoke about how I hope people are seeing that this is the De Gea that we have, that kind of a thing. So, man, there's no doubt in my mind right now that Simone is in a better run of form. Come next summer, he might even be the better player. But when it comes to selecting who should start at the Euros, for me, it's not just a matter of put out the best players. You have to get the right dynamic, the right mix, and having experience, especially at the keeper position. Man, that's just so important. And yeah, it just depends. If he performs at a high level and De Gea does not rebound well, I would go with Simon. But if De Gea can get back even close to what he was a few years ago, I'd probably still go with him, even though I would not do it because he's a better keeper.
Yeah, good shout. I think in my personal opinion now, I think he should be number 1. I think David De Gea now. I think his best years are behind him. I don't see him hitting the level. I don't see him recapturing or hitting the level that he was at whilst he's at Manchester United. I think he should have left when he had the opportunity.
Yeah. Man, imagine if he was in Madrid right now, what would have happened,
Yeah.
A fax machine, who'd know that a fax machine would stand in David De Gea to wait?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Man, how different would these last few years have been for some of those clubs? If that one move, if it had gone through. So going to the question of whether or not he should start, though, it's interesting because Lucho is so sneaky when it comes to pressers. Like I heard that statement as either De Gea's my guy. Everybody relax. Just know that now we're going with him next summer. I could just as easily hear him saying that as in, let me honor this player, respect him, but I'm definitely about to put him on the bench. You just don't know with him, man. He's such a, I don't mean sneaky in a mean way, but he's very playful with the media, and he's not going to reveal too much too early.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm actually a little bit curious about the stats as well. And if you look at the last 2 seasons, I think De Gea hit his peak in, I guess it was the 2017-18 season, where he recorded amazing world-class peak numbers in terms of post shots, XG, which is probably one of the best metrics for a keeper. But since then, it's been a massive regression. And another Spanish keeper, Kepa Arrizabalaga, he is the worst. He is definitely the worst keeper in the Premier League. And I don't even need to think the second time to say this, because it's pretty obvious. And De Gea, coming to De Gea again, I think positioning was probably never his part of the game, his good part of the game. It's always been reflexes and shot stopping. And I think
that's fair.
Yeah, I actually see his shot stopping regress a lot more last season than, and that actually says something, and it's definitely going down. He's definitely declining, and it's very obvious. And for Manchester United to keep Dean Henderson again, they're keeping Dean Henderson because Sheffield United have signed Aaron Ramsdale, so it looks like Henderson's gonna be kept at United. So it's going to be more or less like De Gea probably getting slowly replaced by Henderson. Probably Henderson might start as number 2 at first, and he might slowly get eased if De Gea keeps on making the mistakes he did last season.
Well, that would kind of kill his chance at the Euros, I think. If it really went that far south, I think he would lose that position. But again, I'm still okay with De Gea being on the squad. Kepa being on the squad, to me, mind-blowing. That man, yeah. Honestly, I think of 5 Spanish keepers that I'd take over him, and Chelsea pedigree, I guess. I don't know what that. There were rumors that he was going to be going to Atleti for Oblak, which had me up in arms, to say the least. Always a ridiculous rumor, no question about it. But still, that was one of, and I'm one of those people who probably has a surprising view of what Atleti should be doing with Oblak, but just not for a guy like Kepa.
Yeah, definitely. And coming on to the last 2 patron questions, Michael, before ending the podcast, both the questions are from our patron Paul, and this is about Barcelona again. So his first question is, do you think Barcelona's troubles both on and off the pitch are actually as bad as the media make it out?
The English media or the Spanish media? Either way, I think yes. Either way. Look, you have the biggest player in your team very publicly saying that he has no confidence in the institution of FC Barcelona. So obviously, what more can you say than that? The vote of no confidence for Barto. I think things are as bad as they make it out to be at the institutional level. Whether things actually play out that badly on the pitch, we talked about that before. I still wouldn't be surprised if they kind of overperform against expectations. But yeah, I think it's as bad as the media makes it out to be.
Yeah, and his final question is about La Masia again. Do you think Barcelona might actually now, it's been pretty long since there has been like a world-class talent come out from La Masia again. At one point of time, I can speak for myself. I was probably thinking that you could actually see world-class players coming in every 2 or 3 years from La Masia, but it's all gone wayward there. And Paul's question is, do you think Barcelona might have better success using La Masia in the future, or do you think again they're going to go with these 100 million signings, 60, 80 million signings?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you immediately, I think that's a false dichotomy. Even when we look at great success under Pep Guardiola, yes, it was primarily signings from La Masia, but you don't win that silverware without guys like Thierry Henry and Dani Alves, David Villa, even Ibra had a, underrated season. You had some massive signings back then, okay? Record signing. So it's not as if they're not athletic club, right? They're not running out with a bunch of local boys and winning trebles. But still, nonetheless, I do think that is sort of a false dichotomy. You don't have to do one or the other. But to really answer that question, you have to know what the long-term plan is. it goes back to my point before. If you were going to tell me that we're not looking at this season necessarily as a wash, but we're trying to plan 2-3 years out instead of just going year by year, then I say, guys, get rid of a lot of these older players, even guys like, if you could get rid of Busquets, I'm talking like that caliber of player. I wouldn't get rid of him. I would put him on the bench. But start transitioning some of these guys out. Get rid of Suarez. I'd even start trying to market Griezmann to maybe PSG or something, and start tapping into some of these younger players. Fati, Trincao, Pedri. Get some of these guys on the pitch more and see what you're going to do with the young talent. But we don't know that. We don't know what the plan is, so you don't know if you should rely on young players. I think there are probably a few positions that you're going to have to buy. Specifically both fullback positions you're going to have to buy, and just given the state of football today, you can rarely find, Liverpool, they're freaks, you can rarely find elite fullbacks without nearly breaking records on those players. So if there was anywhere that if I'm Barcelona I'm going to spin big to get, it's going to be at fullback, and the rest of the squad, go for some young guys, see what they can do for a year or two.
Yeah.
I definitely hope Barcelona doesn't cheekily put in again a 140, 150 million for Liverpool's fullbacks.
Man, they should. If they were going to do anything, that's what I would do. Man,
Yeah.
as sure a thing as you could get, probably.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode, Michael. It's been a pleasure speaking to you once again. I mean, last podcast definitely was amazing. This is again another top podcast, and I hope people will enjoy La Liga this season, because obviously it's as exciting as it gets. And by the time we release this podcast, the first match week would have been already done, but we've obviously spoken a lot, which I think listeners can take in for the whole season. So it's been fun talking to you, Michael.
Yeah.
Likewise, guys. I love it. Every time. Look forward to doing it again, man.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's been a privilege, mate. Always welcome on here.
Yeah, we'll circle back with Barcelona's next manager in 2 months. We'll come back on again.
Yeah.
I mean, people actually don't expect, worse than the current situation. But like Chris said earlier in the podcast, he did not expect, and you see what's happened right now. So you never know. You never know with Barcelona.
Yeah, let's hit it back with Messi's player manager in a couple of months. We'll get another podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this podcast, and thank you to all our listeners as well for tuning into our podcast. Until the next episode, bye bye.